Hello and welcome viewers to this 10th episode of S.A.L.T, Sharing and Learning Together, a combined class project of Master of Divinity, second year, and Master of Arts in Clinical Counseling, first year of Oriental Theological Seminary. With the participants are all students, and this is part of our learning journey under the course and Introduction to Pastoral Care and Counselling. This video is purely for educational and awareness purposes. In this episode, the topic is something that affects so many of us, but there's very little talk around it. People are just too self-conscious to admit their insecurities or are very busy caught up in that faulty habit of comparing themselves to the other. We try to formulate our self-image by the clothes we wear, the restaurants we go to, the cars we drive, and so on and so forth. But is it wrong to wear good clothes, to go to fancy restaurants, or to drive expensive cars? We are not saying that those things are wrong, but it is wrong when we derive our value or our self-worth from the external things that we possess. Surrounded and driven by this spirit of consumerism and comparison, today we will try to talk about inferiority and self-esteem, which affects us all every day. For this very important talk, we have Ms. Tasale Kent doing her Master of Arts in Clinical Counseling first year. We have Ms. Alakale Jishi doing her Master of Divinity second year here in Oriental Theological Seminary. Well, first things first, can one of you briefly explain for us what is inferiority and self-esteem?
Inferiority, when we look into this word inferiority, it is when a person feels less value, when he feels that he's worthless, and also when they feel that not good enough, especially when they start comparing themselves to others. An Austrian psychiatrist named Alfred Adler, he said that inferiority, every one of us, we have this feeling of inferiority, and that it also influences our behavior. He also said that such feelings can either push a person to do better in life and achieve great things and also develop healthy actions, but at the same time these feelings can also be quite overwhelming, and so in this case a person feels less valuable, he feels unworthy, and also they start to develop this feeling where they will start to withdraw themselves from others. And Adler, he defines this as inferiority complex. And so such are the things, such factors, these are the things that influences someone to develop this inferiority complex. And an example can be for us students in a class where example, we got our results and then we start to compare ourselves with someone who has higher, better results. And also another example could be in this social media world, we will scroll into social media or anything and then start comparing ourselves with someone who is doing so much better in life. And when we look into self-esteem, on the other hand, is where we value ourselves and see ourselves, our worth. It can be positive and also it can also be negative. Positively, a person who has a high self-esteem, they start to feel love, they start to feel capable, and they feel worthy. Whereas as someone who has a very low self-esteem, they feel very useless and they feel very worthless.
Well, thank you so much for very clearly defining for us what inferiority and self-esteem is. I think whenever we talk about ourselves, it's very natural and also very easy for us to refer to the negative, or for that matter, our own flaws, the weak side of our personality. But it's very hard for us to talk about something that is good in us, and whatever the reason that may be. It's very easy talking about our own weaknesses. So those kind of talks may not be very healthy, but at the same time, whenever we try to talk good about ourselves, those talks can often be misunderstood for a form of pride. So in this context, if we can have a biblical understanding of what this inferiority, or for that matter, the self-esteem is, I think it'll go a very long way in helping us formulating or for that matter, talking about our own self in at least from the biblical perspective. So can you kindly give us what does the Bible say about self-esteem?
When we look into the worldly perspective, the world defines self-esteem as in terms of achievements, in terms of appearance and our success. But the Bible, on the other hand, it takes a very different approach. Firstly, the Bible, it talks about how our value comes from God and not ourselves. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27 talks about the imago Dei, the image of God, how we are all created in the image of God. And how this means that every single person, every one of us, regardless of what we do, whether we have achieved anything or not according to the world, we are all worth. We are all people with dignity because God, He gave that to us. Now, when we think of the word self-esteem, sometimes it is associated with pride and arrogance. And the Bible clearly warns us against this too. When we look in Romans, in the book of Romans, it talks about how do not think of yourself highly as you ought to, but think in sober judgment. And so, in other words, the Bible teaches us that self-esteem is not about how the Bible teaches us that self-esteem is not about how we think of ourselves better than others, but also at the same time, it is also not giving the idea that we are also unworthy people and we are worthless. An example from the Bible would be from the Old Testament, Moses, where God commanded Moses to lead the Israel, and he responded saying that who am I, that like why should I do that? And God, because Moses, he feels inferior, but God, he reminded him saying that he's with him. And so Moses was able to do that not because of his capabilities or his abilities, but because God was with him and God's presence was with him, and God made him able to do that. When we look in the New Testament also, it talks about how we are all people who received a new identity in Christ. 2 Corinthians and 1 John will talk about that. And this also tells us that biblical self-esteem is not about pride, like how the world defines it, but it is about how seeing ourselves as God sees us. God created us with love. He made us capable. He also gave us purpose in life. And so the biblical perspective, when we look, it's totally different from how the world defines pride, because it shifts the focus from look at me to look at what God has done in me.
Well, thank you so much for giving us that very clear and beautiful understanding of what the Bible says about inferiority and self-esteem. The concept that you just brought out, the imago, or for that matter, the image of God, I think all of us need a healthy dose of that reminder every day. When we start to understand ourselves and our worth from what God has done in us, then I think that's a very good ground to start formulating or fighting inferiority, or for that matter, our very own self-image and self-esteem. So thank you so much once again. I'm sure both of you will agree with me that that the society that we're living in now is very complex. Our values, our cultural beliefs, even our religious belief for that matter, it's no longer the same. No, we are bombarded by informations right and left every single day. And in this complex situation, society, values are shifting very quickly. So having said that, those can be one of the factors why we are struggling to formulate our identity, or for that matter, a stable image of ourselves, because like you have very clearly mentioned earlier, we are constantly trying to compare ourselves with one another, or we are trying to adapt ourselves to the fast-changing society that we're living in. So, can you kindly enlighten us on some of the external, or for that matter, even internal personal factors that contributes to inferiority and low self-esteem?
Some of the external factors that can be is negative childhood experiences, such as strict parents, and also social rejection, and also the societal standard of beauty, how the society views beauty, And also in a workplace, comparison in the workplace such are the factors that can be that affects, because when we look at these external forces, it's giving out or bringing out the message that you are not good enough, you are not enough, and so these are the things that influences a person's self-esteem. And another example would be taken in the context of a family where a teenager is constantly, compared to the other sibling who is doing so much better comparatively, and also constantly so much better and smarter. And so what happens is this teenager will start to develop, the sense that I'm not good enough, and I will not be able to be like my brother or my sister, and then I am not capable enough, and so they will start to believe that they are not capable enough. We also have internal factors like negative self-talk, where they're like, I'm not good enough, or another would be mental health issues, where depression and anxiety comes into the picture, and also cognitive distortion, where they believe in lies like, if I fail once, I will forever be a failure. Such are the things that affects a person. And so this inferiority complex, it develops when external forces such as forces like comparison and criticism, it combines with internal factors like doubt and brokenness. It develops it develops inferiority complex.
Thank you so much once again for highlighting those internal and external factors. I think knowing those factors can really help us to be on guard, to watch ourselves, not to be influenced by the spirit of, like you have mentioned, comparison with one another, or for that matter, even our own personal weaknesses, to be on constant guard, so that we can have or develop a healthy self-image. So thank you so much for highlighting those factors. I think even viewers back at home will derive great benefit from listening to those factors, and that is going to go a long way in helping us as individuals. So having said all that, I think the urgent need is also to talk more about this issue in our context. So I don't know the statistics or the realities of how many of our young people might be struggling with this inferiority and low self-image. So, and also trying to live to the expectation of other people, it can be very, very daunting, and we are all plagued by that in one form or the other. So, in what ways, do our cultural, or for that matter, our societal expectations contribute to building up of inferiority or low self-esteem, especially among the youth?
Okay, so when we talk about inferiority complex and low self-esteem, especially among the youths, one of the major contributing factor can be the pressure of perfection that the society puts on the youths, and we see that oftentimes, youths are being judged based on how much they're achieving, how well they're performing for the society, or how successful they have become in the eyes of others. And when they when they fail to meet these needs of the society, they are often being judged, they are criticized, or like they are looked down. And in some cases, they are also seen as leftovers. And so this kind of environment can really bring low self-esteem to the youth. And secondly, comparison. So not every parents, but we see that in some families we see that especially parents, when they see the other children performing more better than their children, or like more talented, more sociable, and so on, so they tend to compare their children with others. So like sometimes when they intentionally or unintentionally bring out this kind of conversation, this kind of topics while having conversation with their children. So when they bring this kind of topic while having conversation with their children, the children might develop this negative self-image. And thirdly, the social media. We are living in especially in this generation, we are living in a society where social media has become a very, social media has become an active part of our life. And so we see so many things in social media. For example, people trying to compare their life in social media, trying to show how perfect their lives are. And so when youth, especially youths, when they spend their time in social media, viewing all those videos and all of those vlogs, like they start questioning themselves, and then they start to develop this negative self-image. And so I think those are some of the major contributing factors. Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us those realities, and I think what you've just highlighted is really helpful and calls for utmost discretion. I think even from the side of the parents, especially to stop this unhealthy habit of comparing one child to the other child, or for that matter, comparing your own child to the other children who may be doing well academically, or for that matter, seems to be more talented. That's just the way things are. And when we start comparing or putting expectations on them, that's when the child, or for that matter, especially we grow up having this sense of inferiority or low self-esteem. So thank you, Alokali, for giving us that wonderful and clear contributing factors of inferiority and low self-esteem in our society today. We have talked about a lot of things, contributing factors, the effects of it, and also some ways that can help us as individuals, or for that matter, even as a society, towards fostering healthy self-image and fighting inferiority complex. But we know that the harsh reality is there are many people out there struggling with inferiority complex and low self-esteem, and I'm sure that is affecting their personal life, their relationship, and even their career. But for reasons best known to the individuals, we don't seem to be looking for help. So if certain people struggling with this kind of issues were to come to us for help, or were to come to us looking for directions, what will be some of the helpful ways that we can help them fight this inferiority and unhealthy self-esteem?
All right, so inferiority complex is something that most people experience. And so just according to my research, I wish to share some of the few steps which might help some people who are going through this issue. So the first step would be knowing your strength. So like, we as a human being, most of the time we are so much focused on our weaknesses, and we don't give much attention to our strength. And I've come across so many people who talks about their weakness, how bad they are in something, that they are not good enough. But then it's very rare to find someone who talks about their strength. So I think if you and I, like, if we are someone who is struggling with low self-esteem, I think the first step should be knowing our step. So what we can do is like by doing small activities, like maybe sitting down alone somewhere and then trying to think more deeply about yourself, and then trying to noting down some points in your some few points where you consider it as your strength. And here, strength, I'm not talking about you being good at dancing or singing or preaching or anything, but then this strength can come in the form of kindness, you being able to adjust with people, you being able to make people smile. And so when we really start focusing on all those things, I think it can really help us to see ourselves in different way. And secondly, we should always remember that everybody has flaws. No one is perfect. The things which we see in the social media, it's just the highlight, and we don't know the full story. So I think we should not judge ourselves. We should not be too harsh on ourselves by comparing ourselves to others. And then we should keep in mind that everybody has flaws. And maybe you are feeling inferior to someone, maybe to the person in the social media, or maybe your friend. But we must remember that even the person might be feeling inferior to somebody else, or maybe even to you. So Understanding that will really help, I guess. And lastly, and most importantly, are having the healthy relationship with God. When we understand that our worth is not based on how we look, what we have achieved, but then on the fact that we are created by God and loved by God. And so when we have that mindset, I think it will really help us to see ourselves in a different view.
Well, thank you so much once again for highlighting those very helpful measures. I think the point that you mentioned, when we talk about strength or something that is good in us, like you very clearly said, oftentimes we tend to associate those things with the talents that we have, but not so much in terms of our, like you have mentioned, the kindness. And we can all be kind in one way or the other. So I think that's very helpful. And those measures that you have given will definitely go a long way in helping people, or for that matter, even ourselves, fighting this inferiority and low self-esteem. So, having said that, we know that there are many people out there struggling with inferiority and low self-esteem. So, for viewers who possibly needs to hear this message, what is that one word of advice or encouragement that you would like to convey?
Okay, so to the viewers out there, I want you to always remember that overcoming inferiority complex is not something which can happen overnight. It takes time. Change takes time, and that's okay. Take an example of a caterpillar turning into butterfly. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. There's a process in it, and it happens step by step. In the same way, even overcoming inferiority complex is a process. There will be ups and downs through the journey. Of course, I can't promise you that the journey will be smooth. But then, like there will be some days where you feel like you are improving. Like there will be some days where you feel better. Also, there will be some days where you feel discouraged. But what matters most is that you don't give up and you keep trusting yourself in the process, and then believe that you are valuable.
I know it's very easy for me to sit in here and tell you this theoretically, and when practically it's not easy. But to our viewers out there, if you're someone who is struggling with the feeling of inferiority and low self-esteem, I want you to know this, that you're not alone. And all of us, somewhere down the line, or perhaps in the past, or even in the future, we wrestle with doubts, we wrestle with the feeling of comparison. What we need to do is we need to stop comparing ourselves with others and start embracing the steps, the growth in our lives. We usually celebrate the perfection, the good things in life, but what we need to do is we can celebrate the progress instead of the perfection. And even when you fall, don't see it as a failure, but what you can do is you can see it as a part of learning in your journey. What we also need to remember is that you are held in God's love and in His perfection. And then even when, on days when you make mistakes, or on days when you feel like you're not worthy, remember that God loves you and I. And so don't let the lies of comparison steal your joy. But remember that our identity is grounded in God's love and His purpose for our lives.
With those words of encouragement, we come to the end of today's discussion. But let me reiterate that fighting inferiority and low self-esteem is a process and can be a very long, painful process sometimes. But remember to be patient, remember to be gentle with yourself, and also, very importantly, remember to seek help if you need it. Our value is not determined by our external material possession. Once again, this is a 10th episode of S.A.L.T, sharing and learning together, talking about inferiority and self-esteem. I am Mihimu Apon, and until the next time, stay safe, stay confident, be kind, and remember your worth. Thank you.